Please share this story with anyone who's still naive, gullible, or stupid enough to believe that government officials, as well as public health officials, were simply good people acting in the best interest of their subjects, citizens, during the pandemic in promoting both the vaccines and the mandates. It's now been confirmed that the federal government accepted the unknown long-term safety and efficacy of COVID-19 vaccines on behalf of its citizens when it signed a contract with Pfizer for millions of doses. How do we know? Well, it's all in a recently released copy of the agreement between the Canadian government and Pfizer. Purchaser further acknowledges that the long-term effects and efficacy of the vaccines are not currently known and that there may be adverse effects of the vaccine that are not currently known. Reads a copy of the October 26, 2020 contract with Pfizer, which was obtained by the Canadian Independent via an access to information request. For those of you who watch my channel regularly, you'll recall I first mentioned this aspect of the agreement when a South African judge forced the South African government to make their contract with Pfizer public. The Epoch Times also has received confirmation via email with Health Canada that Public Services and Procurement Canada have confirmed that the document is indeed a redacted copy of the contract between Canada and Pfizer. By signing this agreement, Ottawa, on behalf of Canadian citizens, also acknowledged the vaccine and materials related to it were rapidly developed due to the emergency circumstances of the COVID-19 pandemic and would continue to be studied by Pfizer after the vaccines were delivered. Now, I'm not sure about you, but I don't seem to recall these little kind of aspects being mentioned about the safe and effective vaccines as they were being marketed and mandated by our illustrious Prime Minister and other government officials. In the contract, it was also agreed that the vaccine products would not be serialized, a process which gives a unique identification number or code for each product, allowing its history, location, and other important information to be tracked through the supply chain. Tracking schmacking, who gives a shit? I guess what happens in Ottawa stays in Ottawa, right? While sections 8 and 9 of the agreement between Pfizer and Canada have been completely censored, as I had mentioned in a previous post, a leaked document between the company and South Africa obtained by the Health Justice Initiative showed the sections were titled Indemnification and Insurance and Liability. In those sections, South Africa had agreed to indemnify, defend, and hold harmless Pfizer and its representatives from all lawsuits, settlements, fines, and expenses arising from claims resulting from the vaccines, including injury and deaths. The only exceptions were for a breach of confidentiality or fraud. How much you want to bet the language is the same in the contract with the Canadian government? South Africa also agreed to create and maintain a no-fault compensation fund to provide payments to its citizens who experience injury or harm because of the vaccines. The government agreed to demonstrate that Pfizer and its affiliates would have adequate protection as determined by Pfizer's sole discretion from liability claims arising from vaccine-related injuries or deaths. Again, I would venture to say the contract with the Canadian government is going to be eerily similar. The contract between Canada and Pfizer also omits the amounts that were paid for the vaccines. In a 2022 report by Canadian Auditor General, it was revealed that the vaccines cost an average of $30 per dose. Pfizer initially announced it would be selling the vaccines at $19.50. What a bargain. Come on, it's called profiteering, and I can't blame Pfizer. After all, they're not a nonprofit. But it certainly seems like Pfizer got the better of our best and brightest elected officials in the negotiating rooms, huh? The 59-page agreement was marked confidential, and the federal government has repeatedly said it was bound to secrecy on the terms it signed with the pharmaceutical company. Disclosure and transparency. Yeah, right, man. It's Ottawa. That's how it works. In March, Pfizer Canada President Naj Sampson told the House of Commons Public Accounts Committee that even MPs were not allowed to view the terms of the agreement because the company's technical information needed to remain confidential. Yeah, I'm sure there's lots of technical information in that. Disclosure of our confidential agreement would be an extraordinary use of authority, testified Mr. Sampson, adding that MP's request to view the confidential agreements sent a very concerning signal about how this country upholds its contractual obligations and could challenge its reputation as a reliable partner for future contracts across all business sectors. Wait a minute, these are the same MPs that represent the ordinary citizens who are being told to take this and they can't view what's in this agreement that their money's paying for? In February, Liberals on the committee wanted the MPs to sign non-disclosure agreements before viewing the vaccine contracts. Non-disclosure. Mean don't talk about it. Okay. Liberal MP Anthony Housefather argued that because the vaccine contracts were signed at the beginning of a pandemic, when companies were being told to rush vaccine production, no, nothing wrong with rushing, the products were not tested in a normal way. Oh, normal? You mean like diligently over the course of many years? Because of this, Mr. Housefather argued the conditions between the federal government and pharmaceutical companies were different. Sounds like horseshit to me, Mr. Housefather. Thankfully, the committee ultimately rejected Housefather's amendment. As a taxpayer, you'll be less than happy to learn that an Auditor General report from December 2022, which I also cited previously, found the Public Health Agency of Canada ended up with a large surplus of doses, with many expiring before they could be used by Canadians or donated to other poor countries. A total of 32.5 million doses sat in federal and provincial inventories at the time of the report, with many set to expire by year's end. But as a guinea pig, you'll be happy to learn that a total of 32.5 million doses sat in federal and provincial inventories at the time of the report, with many set to expire by the year's end. There's always an upside to every story, folks. Anyway, I do thank you for listening and watching. Please share this story with those naive and foolish people who still believe that Mr. Trudeau and his fellow elected officials and public health officials were only doing what was best for Canadian citizens. You can also follow me on my Rumble, my Locals account. If you haven't yet subscribed to my channel, please do so. And you can also follow me on Twitter at Camera612, and I will see you next time.